So, a very, very bright and sunny good morning to all of you. We are here with an AQI of 209, a temperature of 15 degree, average humidity of 78%. So we have all this data, like Shashi Kapoor used to have Ma, right? Today we have Ma as well as data, all of us. But then, do environmentalists, they have the right kind of leadership support to be able to use this to improve the quality of our life? I would say, first of all, a very, very warm welcome to all of you on this very apt subject on the subject that the keynote speaker talked about. So in today's rapidly evolving digital landscape, data is no longer just a byproduct of business operations. It is a cornerstone of strategy, innovation, and sustainable growth. The ability to not only collect data, but to derive actionable insights and tangible value from it, that's the critical differentiator for organizations across the globe. Now, in today's discussion, we will explore on how organizations can bridge the gap between raw data and the real world value, addressing challenges such as integrations, governance, ethics, privacy, while leveraging the emerging technologies like AI, ML, blockchain, and advanced analytics. Now, together as a panel, we will help to uncover strategies to turn data into powerful asset that will help drive smarter decisions, faster innovation, and a greater societal impact. Now, I would like to thank nasscom for bringing together such an exceptional panel. I think who have already been introduced. I think these diverse digital experts, they bring in their varied perspectives and cutting-edge insights into the transformation potential of data analytics. So I think I will start with my first question. I'll start with Rishu. So in today's world, we are surrounded by data, but are starved for insights. How do we assess where are we in our analytics journey?
Thanks, Akhil, for the question. But before I take that, I really want to appreciate nasscom for the people we have out here, the people who are translating it for the hearing and speech impaired leaders that we have. My mom is hearing and speech impaired, so I know how tough it is, the job that you all are doing. We've been doing it, me and my sibling, we've been doing it for life, so it's fantastic. It's a whole new acceptance on inclusivity, and I really appreciate nasscom doing that. Thank you. So coming back to your question, Akhil, on how do we assess? If you look at the assessment of an organization, I would sort of break it into three categories. One, we assess the current state. Where is it that we are standing? Second, we identify where are the gaps, where are the weaknesses, what do we do? And third is the long-term roadmap. Now, if we look at how organizations are moving, let's start with how we position them into varied categories. Zero being the organizations, who are doing basic reporting and dashboarding. Such organization would have decision-making, which is more reactive in nature. To level 1, which are the organizations who are actually leveraging basic BI tools to be able to understand the historic data and sort of understand the trends that are happening. So this is more of diagnostic in nature. Level 2 being the organization who are actually leveraging the past historic data with advanced tools to make future predictions in terms of trends and patterns and so on and so forth. The next stage would be more of a prescriptive in nature, which is where you use the advanced analytics to sort of bring in a perspective in terms of how my decisions are going to be optimized. How do I have systems who recommend my actions? What are the steps that I need to take? To the level 5, which is more of a nirvana stage, which is where we bring in the cognitive AI and autonomy in picture to have systems who can make decisions which are optimized in nature without human interference. Now, having said that, what I typically see that most of the organizations are in the early 3 stages, with handful of them in the stage of prescriptive, to only a few number of organizations have actually brought in autonomy. Now, while assessing where do we stand, it's important to understand the key dimensions, which is your dimensions across your technology, tools, people, processes, data. How are we standing across all of these pillars? How are we leveraging all these areas? To understand, where we are, it is important to, have a spin on, talking to the internal stakeholders. What is it that my business teams are feeling, my data scientists, IT teams, business teams, bringing all that perspective together and sort of doing an external benchmarking to understand where is it that the industry is standing versus our organization. And then, of course, you go ahead, identifying the KPIs and metrics and, identifying those gaps to be able to build a roadmap for your organization, which would have your short-term, medium, and long-term goals, wherein you bring in a perspective of, for instance, a short-term goal could be, how do I enhance my data accessibility? A medium-term goal could be, how do I have a building block for advanced analytics? For a long-term goal could be, how do I bring cognitive and AI in picture? So it is critical for organization to look across these dimensions and sort of position them across these 5, stages of maturity, if you will.
That's a great insight, Rishu. Thanks for that. And I think, would anybody like to add? Otherwise, I'll move on to next question for the panel.
I think she covered it pretty well. The journey for all organizations is probably going to take a similar path. I guess the only thing I would add is we see organizations trying to leapfrog, especially because you don't really have time to kind of go through this. So you'll see organizations working on many of these levels of maturity at the same time.
Okay, so I'll move on to my next question, which is for Vinay. While data can illuminate the past, guide the present, and shape the future, but the challenge most people face, what is that path that I follow? So I would like Vinay to share his approach for defining the roadmap for advancing an organization analytic journey while maintaining the focus on business outcomes.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, see, it's interesting. So I'll answer it in a few parts, but a little bit of introduction. So, at Coforge, we have a large data practice, over 3,000 people who today provide end-to-end services across the data lifecycle. Obviously, analytics and GenAI solutions are a part of it. So your question is really in 3 parts that I would like to answer. One is from any program or taking our customers, to those business outcomes. I think that path, and I don't want to repeat, but what Rishu said is exactly that journey, right? Start from understanding the current state, what are the business results that the customer is looking for, build a roadmap, get a baseline, do a benchmarking, and all of that, right? And then you build the phased program, the 5 levels she spoke about of getting the customer there, and having a feedback loop, because this is an iterative process. This is not a, one-shot journey. From a people standpoint, and the key is in execution. So from a people standpoint, what we have focused on is 2 or 3 things. Number 1, driving training programs for our people and certifications for our people. In the last 2 years, over 6,500 such certifications is what we did for our people. And less about the courses. I think what's important is the real-life use cases. So we build real-life use cases around customer insights, real-life use cases around decision support systems, and getting people to train on those real-life use cases and then make them industry-specific. What is relevant in banking, what is relevant in travel, and so on and so forth. So those things make a difference. So that's on the people side. Again, Rishu spoke about the process piece as well, right? So analytics is only as good as the data that you're using to train or get to decisions. So that entire life cycle and how do you get all of those processes lined up, is the other part. Finally, it's really the accelerators, right? Again, time to market is critical. and in data, and you'll hear someone amongst us talk about time to insight and all of that. So you will see, the accelerators that we can bring to the table. Again, that gives people an edge, as they kind of build their journey here. So yeah, that's where I would end. I don't know if somebody wants to add. Thank you.
Yep, great response. Anyone would like to add? Or we move forward? So I think we have a great response so far. So before we move over to the next question, I think let's take a deep breath and digest what Rishu and Vinay shared. So moving over to Mandeep, I think as we say, data doesn't create meaning. Humans do. Now, what kind of impact leadership can make in driving data-first culture in the organization? And what kind of investments do you recommend for upskilling employees for the purpose?
Sure. So now, see, we were talking about adopting data or new technologies. And whenever there is a change, okay, people, process, and technology are the three aspects. Now, I'm being from a technology background, I can say, okay, technology is one we can solve, right? But the challenge that organization faces on the people part. And when I say people, it's more on the culture, right? Now, employees hesitant to adopt new technologies, new ways of working, especially on the data first, where data is critical, but the mindset of the people has to be there, right? In the right manner, that, okay, you have to take a metrics-based solution, okay? Whenever you propose or ask for any business process change, focus on what are the outcomes of it. So they are measurable outcomes. And while you're adopting a new technology or new way of working, the outcomes matter, and because they become like a pilot or you can say an example for others to follow. So this is where the leadership can help in increasing the data literacy into the organizations. I give you an example from the recent work I was doing for our organizations. So we were proposing a new technology, generative AI, everybody's trying to adopt it. Now the focus was there on the solution aspect, that's important, but the other important focus was how to increase the adoption of the solution, right? And to increase the adoption, the very first our approach is to make them aware of the technology. So we had to put up a change manager, and the change manager's responsibility is to see how that technology everybody can learn. So it's not just for the end users who are going to use the technology, even for the leaders also. So leadership programs where they say, okay, how to use the technology, what advantage it can bring to the table, and also, of course, for the end users who wants to implement those technologies. So adopting a new technology is more on the cultural aspect of it. So that's very critical here, where a leadership can play a part and create some data literacy programs through innovations, through trainings, doing trainings across all the organizations.
Thanks for the meaningful insight into this. I think if there are no other comments or observations, I'll move on to our next set of questions. I'll kind of once again start with Mandeep now in the reverse order. I think despite such data and tech advances, we live in a world with huge amounts of siloed data. Now, whether in a workflow or an organization, siloed data is like a jigsaw puzzle with pieces from different boxes. So Mandeep, what are your recommendations for data framework, including adoption of tools and technologies in order to address the siloed data jigsaw puzzle?
No, sure, that's a very common problem in organizations. I guess everybody can second that opinion. Data silo is there, right? Different applications, different systems are generating data. Now, to make an organization data first, which was your first question, like what the challenges there and how leadership can play a role. But if my data is siloed, I cannot create a true insights of the data, which is coming maybe from my just business unit. I need to collate data from different business units coming to me. And now this fast-moving world, we just saw earlier in the discussion, there was like 134 billion UPI transactions happening. Now, so much data is getting generated. I need to ingest that data also, right? So this is where the tools and technologies can help a lot, where you can ingest this data real time, and that's what I've seen the trends. Typically, organizations have been ingesting data, doing batch processes, and giving you the insights out of the analytics. Now imagine a banking transaction being done, okay? I spend on, let's say, I go to a child shopping and I do a shopping for my kid. Now that data, bank knows a transaction. If I have to really draw an insight from that, that data has to quickly ingest it, analyze, and give me a recommendation. Why not go your child support plan? Because probably you have a kid, okay? So this is where the technology can play a part, not just batch processes, but real-time data ingestion is important. And now with GenAI coming into place, and not just your structured data, which is, example, your transactions happening, but all your unstructured data, which is a huge corpus of information lying within an organization and driving insights from that unstructured data, which is in the form of PDF documents or your PowerPoint presentations. You have to bring that data also. And we are seeing now the trends that, okay, how do you manage this unstructured data effectively to fully leverage the capabilities of AI and GenAI?
Thanks. I think, thanks, Mandeep. Great pointers all over. Any add-ons to what Mandeep said?
I think, again, Mandeep has hit the point. Getting the data right is key to everything around analytics. And absolutely, from an unstructured data, that's really far more than structured data that our customers, all of us, irrespective of the organizations we are in, we collect. So that brings a level of insight that wasn't there when we didn't have the technology to really process unstructured data.
Yeah, I think very, very valid point. I think, however, in the interest of time, we'll move forward. Vinay, for the next question, I'll come to you. We all concur that bad data is worse than no data. It's kind of data everywhere. We talked of 143 billion transactions. We're talking of, I would say, trillions of data points across the globe. In fact, sometimes even in a country. Now, it's data everywhere, but where is the relevant data? The data that I can use. Sorry. I think this question is for Rishu. Maybe we change the order. So how do you maintain data quality and ensure data governance and compliance? So I'll just come back to Vinay to you a little later.
Sure. Thanks, Akhil. See, if we look at the data quality and governance aspect of it, it's a multi-step approach, if you will, starting with establishing the data governance for the organization. This would include defining the roles and responsibility, who's going to be the data owner, your data custodians, the data steward, identifying those right people is really important. Then looking at your data policies, data compliance, standards, those are the usual aspect that we look at. But it's also important to implement the data quality management practices.
There's some echo.
There's
some echo. Maybe just try and use this.
Okay, is this better? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, so it's also important to bring in the, data quality management practices. Now, within Birlasoft, what we typically do is, each persona is associated as a domain. So, for instance, we have a domain for customers, we have a domain for partners, we have a domain for employees, and so on and so forth. And the basic rules that we have for each of the domains. Now, when we look at the data aspect of all of this, whenever there are data health checkups, if there's any deviation or anomalies, the data steward is sort of, alerted. And this is where, we're able to curb the, or manage the data quality at source. So, this aspect is important, which is where we look at your data profiling, data cleansing, looking at how do you enrich the data, but also the lineage tracking of the data that you've had. Barring that, also looking at the security aspect of it. Now, this is where we could have automated monitoring to, to have alerts whenever there are anomalies or there are changes or there are deviations, but also looking at a feedback mechanism wherein there's a continuous, flow of exchange between the data owners and the data steward, so that there's a, on-the-run understanding of how we can improve ourselves from the use cases and the practices that we are following.
Yep.
Aside of this, like Mandeep said, the cultural bit is really important. How do you get the change management aspect of this done, right? Having an environment wherein there's a focus on accountability, there's a focus on innovation is really important. So that's the change management aspect of it. And then of course, that's irrelevant to say that, you need to have your technologies, your tools for your data management, governance, compliance, how do you bring all of that aspect? So, some of these, like I said, multifaceted approach, starting from your governance framework, looking at your data quality management tools, compliance, security, and then the change management aspect of it.
Okay. So great pointers, Rishu. I think I'll now move over to Vinay another time. So Vinay, the relationship between tech investments and scalability is a big question for all of us in the roles that we play in our organizations. So I would love to hear from you on what's your best approach to investments in infrastructure, especially the technologies, considering the scalability requirements that are changing at a super fast pace, and they're kind of rupturing the fabric of the society.
Yeah, sure. So look, I think you spoke about it earlier. We are drowning in data. At least the 3 or 4 things we are doing, there is no dearth of use cases or potential use cases. What we are doing as part of our, what we call as our Quasar platform is enabling, first of all, to test a lot of use cases to see what is the art of possible. Right, that's where it starts, right? Then, and we'll talk about ROI, I think Rishu mentioned it earlier. The ones where we believe there is an ROI, then how do you really scale those solutions for the customer? The obvious answer starts to, working with the hyperscalers. That's one part of it. The other is we have set up our AI labs where we are focusing more on, the SLMs and the use case specific data models. As Piyush said in the earlier talk, the large language models are out there from multiple partners today, but really building this ecosystem of partnering with hyperscalers, partnering with these LLM providers, and then doing our own, on the edge SLM-based use cases. That's how we are looking at driving benefit and driving ROI out of these. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Vinay. I think I will pause for a moment more because the next question is again to you. So you come first of all in this next set of questions. So the next question to you is incidentally reminding me of a Peter Drucker saying, "You can't manage what you cannot measure." Now, what measures do you have in place to showcase ROI of analytics and data investments? And what metrics do you use?
Sure. Yeah, my answer will sound very simple, but the execution is where the challenge is. See, for any of these, the metrics are again fairly standard, right? You have financial metrics, whether it is around revenue growth, whether it is around cost takeout. You have operational efficiency metrics, you have metrics around your customer scores, whether it is CSATs, NPS, etc., right? So the metrics are fairly well known, right? And on top of that, you may have some strategic or innovative metrics around, the customer may want to look at a market share growth and all of that. The key, the framework to get measuring on these metrics and showing an incremental or a leapfrog improvement is again the same, right? Most of this time needs to be spent in baselining these expectations with your customers. And I don't mean technology customers, I mean business customers. What are the business outcomes they are looking at? How can you peel the onion to really get to the underlying aspirations they have, right? You will initially get some very standard responses, but you have to spend time. So we ensure that those workshops, those sessions with the customers And sometimes they're uncomfortable because people need to spend time really thinking through the outcome they want, right? Not a standard. So doing that and then baselining and benchmarking their current state with whatever is the industry standard is key. And then the KPIs that you define, go back and again do a very, what I call as a day two, after a few days, conversation saying, here are the key KPIs that make sense based on where you are and what you are aspiring to do. After that, it's an execution machine, right? But if you don't get that expectation setting right, and it is as applicable to a data conversation as to many other, transformation programs and, that we may do, it becomes challenging then no matter what KPIs you throw. But the framework, again, is very standard. The metrics are known. I think the focus is on understanding the culture, the change, the real aspirations of your business owners.
Thanks, Vinay, for kind of answering some of the most important questions that I think almost everyone faces in the process of getting their investments for analytics. So my next question is for Mandeep. In this age of AI, data analytics is the future. And that future is now. Now, what do you say on this? And how do you see the analytics trends in the marketplace?
Sure. So now see, historically, when you do analytics, okay, you gather data, you run your analytics job, and you present in the form of graphs, charts, whatever KPIs you want to measure. Now, what I've seen in trends going on, first, I just talked in the previous part also, getting the real-time insights. So that's important, right? Okay. Historically, okay, you see end of day or end of month jobs running and give you the analytics on top of that. But real-time insights can really create some new products or innovation for the company to increase its market share. That's one aspect. The second, now with AI and especially generative AI being adopted, people have started using that on analytics also. For example, the data that you have, existing data, which is more on the structured data, I'll say again, you have pre-canned reports or dashboards, but what about if you want to see from a different dimension altogether? Now, there has to be, with GenAI, what we can do is create a natural language way of talking to the data and get real insights in all the dimensions that we want. I mean, in our organization internally, our CFO is now using, we build these solutions. So we said, okay, for a CFO also, to use those in your business meeting, executive meetings, that, okay, see the real insight from different dimensions. You don't have to wait and ask some team to come up with the data and show that. So that's the real trend we are seeing. And another is on the unstructured data also. Now, insights from structured data is fine. Okay, you do calculations, you do an aggregate data and present to your end customers. But what about unstructured data? So that's just really getting traction into the organization because a lot of knowledge is sitting there. People, or especially departments which are working towards innovation or new product launch, use that data to create these insights and do the analytics on top of that.
Thanks, Mandeep, for bringing up these great points. Do you have anything to add? Okay. So I think I'll move on to the last question. We'll sum up and then maybe have a couple of questions from the audience. So, Rishu, coming to an important question in this highly competitive world, where we need to stay relevant all the time. So, my question is, what steps should be taken by an organization to stay ahead of the curve?
Sure, thanks, Akhil. And like you rightly said, staying ahead of the curve is going to be an amalgamation of what all of us spoke over the last 29 minutes or so, right? It's going to be the best elements that we all spoke of. And, my 2 cents here is that it is going to be about bringing the 2 E's together. Now, what are those 2 E's? What is it that we are envisioning as an organization? Plus, what is my execution model? Now, when I say what is it that we're envisioning, it would have varied elements, right from having a data-driven strategy, my vision, my objective, how I'm going to transform my businesses. how am I going to bring in the culture change? So that's the data-driven part within the envisioning. The second aspect is that we need to have a strategy which is resilient enough to incorporate the changes, the dynamic changes that we see in the industry, in our organization, in a market as a whole as we all progress. That is really important. And the third aspect is the outcomes, the value matrix that Vinay also spoke of, right? How do we bring those business outcomes? How do we align it to what we had set out for ourselves? That is really important. Understanding that, having a performance management done. So all of that is within the vision bucket. Now the second part, which is your execution model. Now this is where it's important to understand the elements of, for instance, architecture. Your technology architecture, your data platforms, your digital platforms. That's one aspect of it. Second is the delivery model aspect of it, right? Your execution models, your funding, how do you ensure that your people and processes are ready? So, bringing these two elements is really important. But at the end of the day, I think the most important part is to understand that we all, as we progress, it is not that we're going to have a data strategy and an analytics strategy, but it is going to be about having an enterprise strategy that imbibes the best of your data and analytics strategy. And I think that is, in a nutshell, of all that we discussed, Akhil.
Thanks, Rishu, and I would say great pointers all over from this fantastic panel. So I think kind of to sum up, I would say it's not just about collecting the bytes, as has been echoed by fellow panelists. So data alone is just potential. The true power comes from how do we unlock that data? How do we analyze and uncover patterns? How do we drive action as a result? And how do we use these insights to drive action and innovation? So let's get focused on turning raw data to refined data to insights, which we can turn again into organized information to drive decisions and transformation. The key is transformation. So it's not about having the most data. Like we don't need to be data hoarders, but making the smartest use of that data. So I think with this, I think we will stop talking about it and let audience ask one or two questions. I hope we are good on time. So we'll quickly answer one or two questions and then close the session.
Hi, my name is Nitin Khanna and I'm CEO of FoundTech Training. It was a very topical panel, very important, and I would want to ask a question, and any of you can respond, which kind of bugs me a lot of time. And the question is that, is there anything more to leadership and decision making than analytics? Or the assumption is that great analysis will give us perfect decisions eventually? Thank you.
Okay.
This can be for any one of you.
No, absolutely. So the first response, I think you prompted that response. We could do great analysis, but finally, what do we make out of that analysis, and how do we drive decisions? How do we infer from that great analysis and actually drive it into action? Like I think I did make a statement. It's not about data, not about great data analytics. Finally, what are the actions that are taken by human beings on it? So finally, that human element will become the biggest driver. So that's my take on it, I think. You want to add anything?
No, I think you answered it well. At the end of the day, the analytics, whatever it throws up, is one aspect of what the leadership needs to take into consideration when it's making decisions. It's a, I look at it as a guidepost, not necessarily, if it was, if it was that binary, then, our agentic AI frameworks will take it from there. So it doesn't work like that. So yeah, it's a critical tool to inform decision making. There are multiple other parameters to look at.
ये आ गया लाइट आ गई